And the resolution here, would you like to move the resolution, Andrew?
Yes, please.
I'll second the resolution. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. So the next item of the agenda is item 12, Hearings Panel Report to the Council on Review of Speed Limits in the Southern Central City. And Mike, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. The recommendations from the hearing panel is for the Council to approve the defined sections of St Asaph Street and Hagley Ave to be 30 kilometres per hour, and also the defined sections of Oxford Terrace and Antigua Street to be 10 kilometres per hour. There are also a number of other recommendations from the hearing panel which are outlined in the report, including the gateways. There are over 700 written submissions to this consultation and close to 30 wanting to be heard. We're all obviously aware that the majority of the submissions that we received opposed the lowering of the speed limits. Obviously, however, that public submissions form one part of the decision making. The hearings panel weighed up the reasons for and against and the information provided from both internal and external sources in determining this recommendation. It must be mentioned that many of the submissions against this proposal did not relate to the item in front of us or give a reason for the opposition. The consultation actually appeared to give a number of submitters a chance just to simply vent. There are a number of important facts that came through during this process. Independent safety reviews for this street all recommend lowering the speed limit to 30 kilometres per hour. The current 30 kilometre per hour speed zone in the central city has reduced average speeds on these streets, and during the period they have been in place, there have been fewer crashes in the slow zone. Our Te Whiti Unlimited Discovery School is scheduled to open in April this year with a roll of 565, which is expected to grow to 670 by 2021, and this is the year 0 to 13 school. Metro Sports Facility is also situated on this street. Whether it is a 30 or 50 kilometre per hour street will make no difference to travel times down this part of St Asaph Street. Lowering the speed limit will not cause more congestion. A person hit by a car doing 50 kilometres per hour will probably die, whereas someone hit by a car doing 30 kilometres per hour probably won't die. The percentage risk of being killed drops from 80% to 10%. The hearings panel did make some changes to the recommendations, and these are listed in 6.2 of the report. Of note is the recommendation not to extend the 30 kilometre zone on Ricketton Ave. This is mainly due to the design of the street, which is obviously totally different to St Asaph Street, and actually at this area the lack of pedestrian use. I think that pretty much covers everything, unless staff have other stuff to add. I'm happy to move it to when we're at that point.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to accept that you've moved the report as the chair of the hearings panel. I think because this is so integrally linked to the next one, I'd invite staff to come to the table and sort of open it up for questions. I think, can I just begin, because I often think that there's a general misunderstanding publicly about the 30k zone or the slow zone for the central city or the core, central city core, and most people don't know that there was an order in council that was passed by the previous government in December 2014, which established the zone. So it took some time after the bylaw was essentially changed by central government for us to implement the changes in terms of the street layout and the notification, but the changes were made by order in council. So the question that a lot of people would have is that if that process was gone through, why was St Asaph Street not included? Because my reading of the order in council was that everything north of St Asaph Street in that block was to be included. but it didn't mention St Asaph Street, and that of course doesn't make sense to people looking at what St Asaph Street has become now. So perhaps you could take me through the intention of the chapter of the Central City Recovery Plan that really saw the south frame, I think, as the extent of the 30k area.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think in consistency with the recovery plan, which set the land areas for the south and the east frames, I think at the time, in terms of setting a low speed limit for the heart of the central city, there was seen to be logic in using the boundary of the south and the east frames as a logical point to enter the 30 km/h zone. So for instance, if you look at Madras Street, the entrance to the 30 km/h zone is west of Madras Street. So Madras Street itself sits just outside of it. At that time, it was clear the south frame would contain a mix of uses there. However, at that time, when the 30 km/h limit was set, it was less clear then that an activity such as, for instance, the Discovery School would be placed within the south frame. And so with that, the subsequent placement of Metro Sports, and indeed the growth of businesses to the south of St Asaph Street, which is already evidenced in crossing activity throughout the corridor, has meant that as officers we felt it was logical to keep in mind what the logical speed limit should be as we look to the future on St Asaph Street. So wasn't there also that the cycleways were going? The cycleway really was going to be the centre of the south frame.
Yeah.
That was the original intention.
Yeah, so the original intention of the south frame was a little bit different than how it's, I guess, evolved to, and it was a bit more of a campus frame that would concentrate the development north of the frame, and within the south frame there was going to be the separator cycle, well, the cycle facility all the way through east-west. That was going to be the main east-west movement.
And that didn't happen because some of the businesses didn't sell and then they remained.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why that hasn't developed that way, but as a result, I guess we've had, and the way the city's developed, St Asaph Street actually developed reasonably early, and there's a lot of, I guess, businesses and hospitality that are established on St Asaph Street, south of that frame, which has changed the environment of St Asaph Street for what it was initially intended. Yeah.
So you've got the cycle lane were never going to go on the one-way streets. They were going to go in the centre of the south frame, and you were going to have the and there was a lot more business developed early on St Asaph Street, and then post that decision around the slow zone, the decision around the school was made as well. Yeah. Okay, so that's a substantially different environment from the one that was being considered when the blueprint was established.
And in terms of the effectiveness of any speed limit, for them to work and to be effective, they have to appear to be sensible and appropriate to the majority of drivers.
Yeah.
And so if St Asaph Street a couple of years ago had been 30 km/h with very little development along the south frame at that point, I think it would have been reasonable for drivers to view a 30 km/h limit at that point as unrealistic and unreasonable. But what we are seeing is rapid growth of development along the corridor there, rapid growth of pedestrian and cycle activity along the corridor, and so in terms of speed management for the central city, it's always wise for us as officers to be mindful of the need for agility, to be mindful of the need to keep an eye on, are the speeds in the central city appropriate for the activity there. So I think, as the chairman of the panel has already indicated, the existing 30 km/h zone has been effective. it has reduced some in the order of a 36% reduction in the number of injury casualties within the zone.
In what period? Sorry.
In the 2 years after it was installed compared with the 2 years beforehand.
36% reduction.
36% reduction in the number of...
What were the numbers?
No, hang on. You can join in.
36% sounds great, but if there are only 4 accidents and it reduced by 1...
Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, I don't know if you've got the actual numbers.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so in the 2 years leading up to the change, there was 52 reported injuries.
How many?
52.
Yeah.
And that's from crashes, and then subsequent for the 2 year period afterwards, there's 33. So there's a 36.5% reduction in injuries.
Okay. So, sorry, I've just got a couple of other questions, and then I'll
and it's perhaps helpful, Madam Chair, just to clarify that in order to have a sort of benchmark for, well, would that have happened anyway, the equivalent figures for the remainder of the CBD, so that's the 50 km/h zone out to the avenues, over the same period, injury accidents reduced from 74 to 70. So a 5.4% reduction outside the 30 zone, a 36% reduction inside it. We have analysed traffic flows as to attempt to examine whether there was any other reason why that level of reduction might have been achieved. We've been unable to isolate any other key factor that would have led to that level of reduction, and those results are not dissimilar to 30 km/h, 20 mile/h zones elsewhere in the world. Those are fairly typical results for this level of speed reduction.
So it's statistically significant, is
Yes.
the description.
And I think it's also worth noting that within that time, the city is growing quite a bit. So there's more people coming into the central city, more pedestrians in the central city. We've got people coming back to the central city, refamiliarising themselves with landmarks and where to go on that. So all those factors could potentially lead to an increase in crashes, but in fact we're getting a decrease, and we're also sort of against the national trend at the moment as well. So I think it's looking pretty favourable at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, what I've read in the report, sort of, and this is, I guess, my last question, is that there is a sense in reading the material that you're drawn to the conclusion that there is no alternative other than to accept the reduction as recommended by the hearings panel, and I'm referring specifically to St Asaph Street in this regard. And due to the inevitability of that, you know, the consultation process doesn't feel right to me, because you count the numbers and you say X number said they wanted this and X number wanted that. But it doesn't feel like that there is that, I mean, is there something wrong with our requirements around consultation when in fact it's almost obligatory when you get to the kind of safety assessment of St Asaph Street?
Yes, Madam Chair, as all councillors will be well aware, the government policy statement on land transport was published last year. In that government policy statement, the government have placed increased emphasis on safety outcomes for New Zealand roads across the piece in order to deliver a safe, what's become known as a safe system approach to road safety. Within that policy statement, the government have announced an intention to review the road safety strategy nationally over the coming year to 18 months, and we're expecting a reframed national road safety strategy to be published by the government later this year, probably in draft initially. It's quite clear from the text of the GPS that the government is seeking to place increased emphasis on speed management as part of that safe system. And in fact, if you read the fine print of the GPS, within that the government is seeking to review the regulatory barriers to accelerate the implementation of the speed management guide, which they're also indicating to update. This is one of the difficulties we believe as officers, Madam Chair, is that the council is obliged to consult over speed limits under the speed management setting rule, and to some degree those road safety outcomes and objectives are a little in tension with the council's obligations to consult the community under the Local Government Act and to seek their views. In fact, the speed limit rule requires us to consult the community over their views. It's understandable that the community, in responding to a consultation like this, if they don't understand what the true road safety benefits may be arising from this, it's understandable that people would likely write to us and say, we don't believe this is the right way forward. And so we believe as officers it would be good if the council and other local authorities had improved guidance from the government as to how to deal with these apparently in tension.
Yes, because it's not a referendum, but it is an opportunity to provide feedback, which might be appropriate in terms of road layout, but less appropriate in terms of speed limits. Yeah. Okay, Sarah.
I'm not going to answer.
Tim?
Thank you. Can I first question to the chair of the hearing, if I may? You said that some of the people presenting verbal and, or whether it's verbal or written, were venting. What do you think that was? Sorry.
Look, there was a variety of reasons that people obviously want to vent within the city. A lot of these people haven't actually been into the CBD or say they've been into the CBD.
Okay.
Yet they're making statements about how bad it is, isn't it? Which is just a hearsay statement and it wasn't actually relevant to what we were looking at. So it just appeared that there were a number of submitters, instead of actually looking at the information that was provided through this consultation process and the decision that we were making, we're just having an event on actually some of the aspects of the CBD, whether it be the other speed zones around the city or the cycleways or some of the designs that Otakaro had done. It wasn't focused on the actual substantive issue in front of us.
Thank you. First one to staff. Sinessa Street basically has, from those safety audits, has been designed to be a 30k street, really, hasn't it, at the moment?
It's been designed to be a safe street in the heart of the central city, yes, and the engineering designs and the layout of the intersections and so on are in accordance with that, given the international guidance that the appropriate, and go beyond speed limit, it's about the typical speeds that most drivers will drive at. So in engineering terms, we're designing these streets to be broadly self-enforcing. If it relies upon police speed enforcement, then in a way we've failed as engineers to deliver an appropriate speed environment. So it's always been designed to achieve a broadly self-enforcing, self-explaining low-speed environment. Our view now is, and that's backed up by the independent safety and functionality review of the corridor that Council commissioned, is that making the street formally a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit would be more consistent with the design that's been achieved.
Thank you. Sinessa Street in some parts is changing with regards to the school, the Metro Sports, and perhaps some would argue that Hebley Community College outside that should have been 40k years ago before any of this happened anyway. But with all that change, if the safety audits are saying it should be 30k's, etc., but this council decides to maintain 50k's, what would be the requirements, changes on St Asaph Street to keep in with regards to safety levels?
Well, the council is in receipt of a wider safety and functionality review for the corridor, which it commissioned post the implementation of the works on St Asaph Street. So this was to look independently at what other changes council might need to make in order to make the corridor work better. and to address the concerns that have variously been raised by members of the community, frontage businesses and so on around the layout of it. The primary recommendation in that report was to lower the speed limit to 30 kilometres an hour, and that delivers a number of benefits. Not only does it deliver improvements for the safety of people crossing the street, but it also delivers improvements in terms of drivers exiting the corridor to enter or leave driveways, of which there are a number along there, and also enter and leave on-street parking bays along there, where they feel pressured under the speed limit. So if council were not to approve that independent recommendation for a 30 kilometre an hour limit there, that report will be presented in full to the ITE committee, probably in the March cycle, and so other measures would then need to be addressed in order to improve the safety of the corridor. That then begins to press us to review the level of on-street parking on the southern side of the corridor in order to improve intervisibility between turning drivers and the cycle lane there. It is possible that if the speed limit were to remain at 50 kilometres an hour, there could be more pressure in order to deliver a safe environment, that we would need to look at the removal of more parking than is otherwise the case with the 30 kilometre an hour speed limit. Now, I can't provide further detail around that, but certainly the way the report is presented to us, that's why the 30 kilometre an hour limit is the primary first recommendation in it, because the rest of the report arises from that recommendation. If, as I say, if council were not to approve the 30 limit there, it is possibly the case that we may need to look seriously in short order at the level of remaining on-street parking that is there, which has then other tensions and challenges for the community and particularly frontage businesses. So it may not be a more straightforward outcome.
Dion, thank you.
Yeah, just when you talk about the 36% reduction in the slow speed zone of accidents, what was it specifically for St. Asaph Street at the moment? I mean, obviously there's been change in design, and you've said you've changed the design to be safer. So what's the reduction just from the design?
We did present figures to the hearings panel in December around the reductions in casualties on St. Asaph Street itself, which of course still remains as a 50 kilometre an hour speed limit. There have certainly been improvements in safety on the corridor as a result of the engineering works, and we've sort of looked at again at the surrounding factors of traffic levels and so on, and it's almost inescapable that some of those changes in casualty levels there almost certainly result from the change in engineering works, which was sort of installed about late 2007, earlier last year. I'm afraid I have got the figures here with me, but certainly we did report those in full to the panel on the 7th of December, so they will be available.
It's important to know that, because obviously you're saying the slow speed zone is reducing traffic, but also it's in context of design as well. I think that's important to note as well, so that we actually understand, is it the speed that is going to make the difference, or is it design, or are we actually solving a problem where there's no problem?
So, as I've said earlier, we believe it's both. That the streets are being designed to achieve a lower operating speed environment, or let's put it that way, an operational speed that most drivers will adhere to, and there are always some drivers who will drive above the speed limit. That just happens, that's life. But what we're looking for is to achieve a consistently lower speed right across the network, and to reduce the variation between slower drivers and faster drivers. The safety on the network overall is heavily influenced by the range of speeds that are on the network. If you can lower the range of speeds between faster and slower drivers, you get a disproportionate improvement in safety.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but we're talking about the safety of what I'm trying to understand is we're talking about the safety of the corridor.
Yes.
And I want to know specifically, is it just going to be around speed, or has the design that we've done on St. Asaph Street already achieved that desired outcome of
we believe it
reducing
has.
safety?
From the information and it's not totally statistically reliable at this stage because it is very early. The engineering measures were really only finished very early last year, so we've got a very short period of time for us to draw. We can't draw full conclusions from it, but the indications are that the engineering changes do appear to have begun to improve safety there.
Okay.
We believe then the 30 kilometre an hour limit, as the consultants have recommended, is more consistent with that design.
Okay. I've got a couple more questions if that's okay.
Sorry.
You're talking about acceptable limit to drivers for the environment around it. So I've got a question around the area after Montreal Street, where you've got the car yards, you've got the former police station, and then you've got around the Metro Sport, which is still developing, and then on the other side there's just nothing there. So do you think 30 kilometre along those two city blocks is actually what you were saying acceptable to drivers in terms of what they'd expect the speed limit to be?
To lower the speed on St Asaph Street, Council would need to consider a new entry point to the 30 kilometre an hour limit at some point south of St Asaph Street. So the engineering designs have merely arrived at a suitable entry point for the threshold.
I'm talking about St Asaph Street past Montreal Street, so those two blocks where, you were saying that if you lower the speed limit, drivers will have, expect an acceptable limit around the built environment and other things like that. So what I'm saying around those other parts of the city that haven't developed, do you think those two blocks will actually have, for drivers, would they expect that to be a 30 kilometre limit, given that the development and the type of network that's around that area?
Well, Metro Sports facility is under construction now. So I think as this year wears on, its frontage, its northern access will be onto St Asaph Street. So as the year wears on, the level of frontage building and frontage activity will increase along there. I think that western end of the corridor, which I completely accept, at the moment there is less there. But actually over the next 18 months to 2 years, the whole nature of the appearance of it there will change dramatically.
Can I just also add that currently there's actually quite a lot of movement sort of north and south in that area of St Asaph Street as well, for people transitioning towards the hospital and in that part of the city, I suppose. So it's not just going along St Asaph Street, it's people moving across St Asaph Street.
And of course, as far as the roadworks themselves are concerned and the carriageway, while the new separated cycle lane and the new landscaping, that's all now finished on that western end of St Asaph Street. So the whole cross-section of the road there and its appearance has already changed significantly and will change again as the Metro Sports facility is constructed.
I've just got one more question, if that's okay. So obviously in the hearings panel, I suggested from a lot of the feedback that was in the consultation was from the members who were going to be at the school, or families that were going to be at their school there. So what was the reason that we're probably not going to just look at a school speed zone around that block where the school is? Rather than changing the whole speed limit of the street? Because
of the other activities along the corridor, we're already seeing the Southtown development off of Wells Street. From some video footage the panel saw as part of the Smart Cities programme. At the panel we saw video footage of a considerable amount of pedestrian activity between the Little High area and south of St Asaph Street there. I think the problem of putting a speed limit in that is just focused on the school zone itself is that firstly it would begin to draw drivers' attention to the need to only slow down over that bit by the school, and so potentially there's a bit of a safety migration you might get to the other ends of the corridor, and secondly that the school has unusual operating hours, so it has a longer entry and exit time during the morning and afternoon, so a normal school speed zone wouldn't be as effective. And the other thing is, as we've seen from SEPTED reports on the corridor and so on, there's an awful lot of nighttime pedestrian activity along there, and again, if a speed zone finished at say 6 o'clock in the evening, it would offer no safety improvements to pedestrians crossing the road there at night. So we believe that 30km/h limit 24/7 for the corridor is the right approach, and the consultants, obviously independent reviewers, have recommended the same.
Yanni?
Thank you. And thank you very much for sitting through the fatality information in the last 15 years. What struck me about that information, and I'm just kind of interested in your response, is that none of those fatalities have happened in an area where we've proposed or are looking at 30k. In fact, the areas where people have been killed in the central city, with the exception, I think, of one on Kilmore Street, which was a car going up the wrong way, or a bus going through a red light, are all in areas where you haven't got any proposal for 30k. So I'm just trying to understand why the focus on this part, when the areas where people have died as a result of being hit by vehicles are not being addressed.
Okay. So fatalities in the network sadly are very rare and random events. The difference between a serious crash and a fatality can sometimes be just happenstance. It may be the physical health of the people involved and their ability to withstand those crash forces. Most of the evidence before us is simple physics. If a person steps into the road and is hit at 50km/h, they achieve the velocity of the vehicle almost instantly. From the figures we heard from Councillor Davison earlier, in a way it's a wonder that any human being ever survives a crash at 50km/h. By reducing the speed to in the region of 30km/h, firstly you give the driver more time to see the person stepping out and slowing. And bear in mind, we're looking at children crossing this road, probably in high numbers. You give a driver more time to react, and you also then, by the time they reach contact point with that pedestrian, the vehicle has already slowed. So you've had a disproportionate reduction in the momentum in which you are hitting that.
I totally understand that, but looking at the information and the evidence, it would appear that the areas where people, and I mean, a number of submissions say that people aren't going the 30, maybe people are going more to the 40 in the current 30k, but St Asaph Street people are going 30. There doesn't seem to be any evidence that shows that this is a corridor and an area where people are being hit by vehicles.
No, sorry, fatalities isn't a measure of being hit. I mean, I think that's what Tim's just asked.
It is all about addressing risk.
What we heard this morning.
You've only measured fatalities, Yanni. We've just had advice this morning about the number of serious injuries.
Yeah, and I think that was the point I was going to make, if I may, is that fatalities is only one statistic. Yeah. And one of those is actually on Manchester Street, which is within the 30k speed limit. The other, if the statistics we already talked about all reported injuries. Now, it's also worth remembering that people sometimes have, I guess, lifetime consequences from being injured in car crashes. It's not just all have a crash, injure yourself, become 100%.
Yeah, no, I get that. So it's not just about fatalities. I understand that. But as I understand it, we had last time we considered this issue, we had a request to review the central city speed limits. A number of submitters have made the point that they live in other areas like Gracefield Ave and in those smaller narrow streets or Stewart Street that they would like lower speed limits through there. I'm just trying to understand how we go from reviewing all the central city speed limits to just doing the St Asaph Street corridor when the evidence seems to show...
Because we asked staff to do this.
That
there was an earlier report, Yanni, that asked them to do this.
Right.
I mean, I'm quite...
So when are we getting that other report back?
Well, we've already been having discussions about the methodology and the process for bringing about change in speed limits, particularly those that are generated from the community themselves.
So, but
I mean, we've had an entire discussion about that, and that will therefore generate a report to the ITI committee. So I mean, we are focusing on the areas where speed limits are inappropriately set at 50k, and local communities want to see them reduced. So we're going to get a report on that in the next few weeks. Pauline, do you recall when you're expecting to get a report on that to your committee?
Stage no.
So I mean, part of this,
but it's not far away.
No,
so
it shouldn't be far
as you read through the submissions, what comes through really clearly from people that are concerned about the proposal is the fact that there's a total confusion within the central city in terms of signage, speed limits, enforcing people, actually human behaviour, driving to the thing. That the people that were concerned, I've read through the submissions, and I don't agree that a lot of the people were just, you know, waffling or being vexatious. Actually, there's some very legitimate concerns that people have raised who have thought about it. So I just had a question in regards to, you know, what advice back have staff given to the hearings panel in regards to the legibility of the inner city speed limits. Particularly, there's been comments around the number of, for example, traffic lights, the number of signs, just the total confusion that people face with all these different signs and variety of speed limits.
So I guess part of the issue with the legibility is that we've been waiting from the approaches from the south of the city to I guess find out what the outcome of St Asaph Street is. So if you're currently travelling up Montreal Street, for example, entering into the 30k zone, you come across St Asaph Street and you've got a couple of 30k signs. And those ones are there in place, excuse me, until we find out whether the change point is going to be north or south of St Asaph Street. And as part of this package of works, if the 30k is approved by council, then there are some additional thresholds that are going to speed thresholds that will go in south of St Asaph Street. We've also got a program of work that's been underway at the moment where we're just going within the 30k, reinforcing some of the signage and some of the markings on the road to try and reinforce that speed limit as well.
So just two final questions. One is, why not just do 40k through the entire 4 AVs and then put special zones, you know, outside the school, outside the hospital to reduce speed? Why can we not just do that?
So the speed management guide is quite sort of clear on us having to set safe and appropriate speeds, and it's basically recommending that for within the central city, or for areas that have high place function and a concentration of active road users, that 30k's now is the appropriate speed for that. The 40s is more generally towards residential areas, and that's why we've done the ones like Preston's and Knightsbridge, etc. The difference in that is also the variable 40, and that's around, I guess, where there's where the risk is sort of concentrated in one location, and also it's not a continuous risk as well. So the 3 different categories are quite specific, and it indicates that 30k's is the more appropriate speed for the central city. On top of that, the international research and the local research and the local evidence is indicating that 30k's is the appropriate speed for where you've got CBDs and high activity areas.
Right. And the final question was in regards to Stewart Street, which seems like a very small kind of issue, but everyone was kind of supportive of Stewart Street being extended. It's outside the Metro Sports. I couldn't see any logic for not extending Stewart Street. It's a tiny little narrow street with a bend all the way up to Morehouse Ave. Why is that not being
Madam
supported?
Chair, we have. So the proposal for the entry point to the threshold presented to the panel was to the panel have agreed to the extension of the threshold entry point to south of the bend on Stewart Street to a point immediately north of Belfer Terrace. The panel asked us to keep that under review post the construction of the Metro Sports facility, which would probably, as you've just said, Councillor, would probably warrant at that point a review of some of those speed limits on those streets in the southwestern corner of the central city. So the proposal before Council today does extend the 30k entry point on Stewart Street about 150 metres south of the original consultation proposal.
Sorry, does it? I'm just looking at the map, and sorry, I've seen the staff advice on it, which wasn't to extend it. So
no, but the
hearings panel has agreed
panel
to extend
has,
it.
yeah.
So just on the map, so I don't have Balfour Street, but here's the original threshold. Are you talking about moving it after the bend?
The proposal before Council today, the original consulted gateway threshold was just south of St Asaph Street, about 30 metres south. The proposal before Council today extends it about 150 metres further south to a point immediately north of Belfer Terrace.
South of the bend.
South of the bend, which was the primary concern from a number of the submitters on Stewart Street, that they felt the 30k would be better through that bend rather than happening north of it. Some asked for it to be extended all the way to Morehouse Avenue, but again we felt it was best probably to review that as part of the access arrangements for Metro Sports.
So is that more explicit in item 13? Is it that's more explicit in item 13 in the recommendation for what we're doing?
Yes.
Oh, you want to deal with it when we get there? Because I just can't understand why you wouldn't just make it to Morehouse Ave, given that you've got Metro Sports there and you've got a natural threshold coming off Morehouse Ave.
Probably for similar reasons we've just discussed, and that is that Metro Sports is not there at the moment.
But it's going to be there.
And so, and it may not just be Stewart Street that we need to review. We may need to look at Selwyn Street and some of the others.
Hang on, but I think that perhaps in order to sort of enable Councillor Henson to see that he's actually got what he wants.
I've got the map now, so
why don't we add in a phrase that enables you to just come back to Council with a recommendation on a couple of these areas after keeping them under review, because I mean we don't want to start another consultation when you know, and I mean, this is always the trouble, you know, like under the Resource Management Act, you can't take future allocation or requirements into account when you're considering a, you know, so it seems to me that it's better to put the rules in place at the time that they are going to be effective. So,
I'll save it for today.
Yeah.
I guess it's a matter of process. If we're on item 12, how can we be just making change or just recommendations to item 13?
And I'm talking about making a recommendation change to item 12. Yeah, Vicky.
Just at the moment, in terms of driving down St Asaph Street and the staging of the traffic lights, what's the actual speed that you're likely to be going?
Progression speed is typically about 30 kilometres an hour.
About 30 kilometres an hour. So actually what's happening on St Asaph Street is cars are travelling at 30 kilometres an hour.
For most of the time.
Yeah, but we have a speed limit that's out of line with what's actually happening.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, so there was that particular one. I also had an issue around Riccarton Ave in front of the Christchurch Hospital, and again, it's not so much the I don't know which way am I going. The easterly route. I'm not so worried about that one. It's the westerly route doesn't make sense to me at the moment. But the suggestion is that is something that could be kept under review for a while.
Yes, certainly, Madam Chair. I mean, the original consultation proposal recommended extending the 30km/h entry point further west on Riccarton Avenue to a point just west of the new St John's emergency access, which is effectively at the western boundary of the hospital. In view of some of the evidence the panel had before them, the panel felt, quite rightly I think, that the whole look and feel of Riccarton Avenue there is very different to St Asaph Street and Hagley Avenue, and so I think they were less convinced that the community as a whole and typical drivers would see an extension of 30 there at the moment to be as realistic as it perhaps is on the other roads. The extension there at the moment doesn't mean we can't achieve a safe access to the emergency services access there. That can go ahead and that's all fine, but council could, if it wished, instruct staff to keep the safety and speed regime of that section of Riccarton Avenue under review in consultation with perhaps St John's Ambulance and the CDHB, and we could report back to you further. We have consulted over it already. Yes. And so
that's my point. It's to actually enable you to come back for agreement without going out to additional consultation and throwing Balfour Street into
you could leave
or
it on
Stewart
the
Street
table
or whatever, whichever one it is. Yeah.
You could leave it on the table, in effect, Madam Chair.
Well, it's not so much leave it on the table. It's the open for review, so that you can come back to us if there's a recommendation to extend. Yeah.
So you could instruct us to keep it under review.
Can somebody write some words that would make sense of that? Right. Sorry, who had their hand up here? Jimmy.
Yes, the same question. This question, yeah. Same this question, Riccarton Avenue, because my particular concern, the section, when the in front of the women's hospital, there was a traffic light there, but before Western, there's a 50 or 60 kilometer. But suddenly, if you are, this the kind of reduce the speed limit to the 30 kilometer, because no entry this new kind of the speed limit series for entry location. I'm particularly concerned more and more the pedestrian cross from the other side,
no, it doesn't go there
to the hospital, and also pedestrian, the outpatient, as well as visitors. This is a serious issue. This section in front of the hospital. This is my concern.
So, through you, Madam Chair, the majority of pedestrians crossing between the hospital and around the hospital corner there do cross within the 30 km/h speed limit and within the traffic signals there. The proposal to extend the 30 further out west along Riccarton Avenue was really more prompted by the new emergency services access, and so the recommendation there really was to assist ambulances turning in and out of there. But, we are dealing with a situation in so much as that's only effective if the majority of drivers see it to be realistic and appropriate. And so it's quite possible that when that new emergency access is achieved and people are seeing ambulances turning in and out of there, then there may be an environment then where, if council's instructed us to keep it under review, that may be the appropriate time to consider its extension to that point at that time.
Can I just ask, in terms of alerting people to the fact that this is a hospital zone, would the speed, reducing to 30k be an indication to people that this is a specific area that care needs to be taken?
Yes, I think it would assist that, but again, it will probably assist it better when that new emergency access has actually been achieved. At the moment, if we did it tomorrow, I think most people would wonder why we'd extended the 30 so far along Riccarton Avenue, probably. So I think in the fullness of time, yes, it would achieve a larger buffer, lower speed zone right across the frontage of the hospital, but the emergency access is not far away. It will happen, I believe, this year. So we're not looking at a long period of time before I think the logic of that may be more obvious.
Thanks, Tim. Just furthering that discussion a wee bit, wouldn't it make sense to have a slower speed, knowing that there is going to be an emergency entrance, that vehicles could be speeding in and out of there? Would a lowered speed give an indication or almost a warning that people should anticipate?
So that was the proposal, but as I say, I think our difficulty at the moment is that emergency access hasn't been achieved there. That's quite a lightly trafficked access at the moment, and so it's about how pragmatic it is to a typical driver. Why 30 here? And I think the environment is going to change again when that emergency access exists. And so if council instructs us today to keep that under review, then we can report back to ITE committee with the appropriate resolutions at that time. I would suggest, Madam Chair, probably it is in consultation with St John's and CDHB. And yeah.
So is there any indication of how long that's going to be before that emergency entrance is up and running?
Well, I think the access arrangements have already been before the community board, have been approved. I think the consents for it have been issued, so I think it is, I don't know the exact date, but I think it is imminent. I don't know whether Mike knows. April.
Yeah, potentially delayed from April, but the soft opening may start then, but it's looking more like September, and if it's not that, it'll be next year. So we should know in the coming weeks. So a couple of questions. First one is around the purpose of the one-way streets, St Asaph being one of the one-ways. What is their purpose as part of our network?
They're St Asaph, Chewham streets across the southern part of the central city, Montreal and Durham on the western side, Barbados, Madras, the eastern side. They're the main traffic distributor streets across the central city. St Asaph and Chewham, and also as far as St Asaph and Chewham streets are concerned, they carry the key bus routes in and out from the bus interchange. Yeah, you know, they are, Chewham and St Asaph streets are very busy streets. And so what we're dealing with here is a complex mix of busy streets, buses on them, and a lot of frontage and crossing activity.
But the main purpose is to get people in and out of the central city.
Yes, and across the inner city.
No.
So that is not true.
So under the inaccessible city, the idea is to get people in and out of the city using the one-ways, and if they want to go across the city, to use the avenues.
So that was the change made post-quake, but the original intention of Christchurch's one-way streets was to get people across the inner city? True,
I'm not sure about the intention, but that's probably how they operated.
Yeah.
Pre-quake.
Yeah.
But that's what a one-way street is designed to do? Is that not their intention around the entire world?
A one-way street is generally designed to move traffic, yes, but I mean that's...
To move more traffic than a regular street?
Yeah, they move high volumes, but with that comes problems. So I guess in the modern thinking, most cities aren't putting in a lot of one-way streets because they're thinking about all road users. They were retained in accessible cities to provide good traffic movements in and out of the city.
Right, so if those two are a major feeder to the bus depot and we're spending millions of dollars in other areas to increase travel times on the bus, does dropping the speed to 30 k an hour reduce that travel time for majority of the buses?
No. The signal regime on Chewham and St Asaph Streets, particularly the inbound buses, when the hospital bus super stop is completed, the majority of buses there should get a green wave from Hospital Corner all the way into the interchange. What do I mean by that? Most buses might not have to stop at any signals along that corridor. So the critical one is the inbound buses to the interchange so they can maintain their times. But nothing in the proposals before the panel today, and this was raised by a submitter to the panel, nothing before council today should have any material effect on bus journey time efficiency.
So are you saying that a 30 km/h green wave will get you there just as quick as a 50 km/h green wave?
No, what I'm saying is on Chewham Street, the buses have a green wave from the bus super stop into the interchange when they're travelling into the city.
But didn't all of our one-way systems have green waves on them for everyone anyway? That was why they got a flow? Because on the 4 avenues you don't get a flow, so people tend not to go out and use them because you stop at every second traffic light, and there's some classics where there'll be no one going the other way and 40 cars on Fitzgerald Ave waiting, and there's nothing going the other way. Whereas on a one-way system, you get a green wave, it's set at 50 k an hour, and you travel across at 50 k because there's no conflict.
Yeah, so you still get that progression of 50 k's. I guess if you go back to pre-quake, whether you got that, the ability to move at 50 k's due to the numbers of vehicles in peak times, you probably say that you didn't get to move at 50 kilometres an hour. So the difference in travel times between the 30 and the 50 is probably negligible. Okay,
and then my other point is, well, there's two ones I'll quickly do. One is around the hospital gap with what we signed off as council not being delivered. How do we know when we make other changes now that what we sign off will get delivered? Because the pedestrian crossing, which was the amendment made at council, was not put in. They've just gone ahead and done their own thing.
Council, when they passed the resolution, wanted to include a pedestrian zebra crossing in the pedestrian, but they also requested staff to assess the width of that pedestrian crossing. So we're working with the staff from Otakaro to assess it, but we're waiting for the schools to come back so that we get it. We've only had it operating for a very short period of time. It's something that we've always talked about. We can easily put it back in. So the staff are working with them as per the 2 resolutions that you've put in there. So they're fully aware, Otakaro is fully aware that need. It's just whether is it going to be a 6 metre, a 3 metre, a 2 metre or whatever. And yes, and you've made a comment here, requested staff to reassess the width of that. The staff are saying, can we wait? They're waiting until the schools go back so we get some normality into the operation of that area before we look at all the conflicts. At the moment, because you don't have that, there's not actually a lot of conflict happening at the moment, so they're wanting to just get some more normal conditions running, and then they'll assess it and then put in what's appropriate.
Okay, different to the way I remember it on the day, but we'll run with that and to look forward to hopefully there being no incidents before that crossing goes in, because it's really unclear down there who gives way to who. So then my other point is around, thank you Dave, the total number of car parks removed for this, do you know that number?
There are 4 car park spaces being removed on Montreal Street to achieve the gateway, and 1 car park removed on Manchester Street in order to achieve the gateway.
So it's just 5 in total? Because when I looked under the financial implications, when we remove a car park, which has financial implications for the council of a number of thousands of dollars per year per car park, because that's the revenue we receive from them, and it must have a financial implication that we care about, because we won't make them all free to try and bring more people in. So that does have a value to us as a city. We do not. Why is that not included in the report if we're going to lose this many thousands of dollars per year by removal of those car parks?
I don't think the ones on Montreal Street are metered car parks.
So they're not metered?
No.
Right, I thought they may have been because of the rapid growth on that part of the city.
Basically, St Asaph Street's generally the the limit to our metered car parks. There are some down Columbus Street and Manchester Street, south of Sinessa Street, but the rest of them are all north of Sinessa Street, sort of cut off.
So those ones are freebies?
Yeah.
No, yeah, but they're mainly hours, you know, like you can only park there for 2 hours or something.
Yeah, for turnover, which has a value. But if the city does grow and get busy, the metering would move, I'd expect.
It's an option for council to consider that, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Very good. All right, so that's everyone. Sarah?
Oh, just really quickly, we discussed this earlier briefly about the information. So in resolution number 7, I've just flicked through to the words "and contextual." And we talked about the information that's provided. I have a mover to the resolution. I don't think I've got a seconder, have I? No. So would you like to second? So I just thought I'd check and see if Mike's okay with the words, and if so, I'll second it. Yeah.
You second the resolution, and if Mike's happy, then we'll include the word contextual.
Yeah.
And so this is getting up for the debate. Process question?
Yeah, just...
I've got that one matter dealt with as a separate resolution.
9 and 10.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is it item 10? No, it's
points 9 and 10 in the recommendation.
Hang on, correct? There aren't 9 and 10.
Oh, has it changed?
Oh, you're
Sorry.
looking at the previous document. What page? 84?
Well, yeah, in the...
Oh, you're looking at 13 or you're looking at 12?
I'm looking at 9 and 10. And
No.
Yes, but are you looking at item 12 or item 13?
No, I'm still on. I'm ahead.
What page?
Go back to item 12.
I'm
So
living in the
item
future.
12,
I just need to check the review of that.
you wanted to deal with...
I got it. And registered you to be aware of that.
It's actually number 3. Resolution 3 approves the proposal to reduce the speed limit from 30 to 10 on the following streets. Is that right? Sorry. And yeah, okay. And all right. So we've got a couple of amendments there which are requesting staff to keep under review, but the mover and seconder are happy with those. And we've got contextual written in. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Dion, you have one more question?
I've just got another question on the build-outs, especially the one on St. Asaph Street. Are you still proposing to have the build-out in the middle of the 2 lanes? I just can't remember what was discussed on the hearings panel. Because obviously there was the concern from the bus companies around the width of that.
Yeah. Yeah. To you, Madam Chair, yeah, the proposal there is for a painted only marking on the carriageway there. As we reported to the hearings panel, prior to implementation, all of these threshold arrangements will be safety audited, so we will ensure that none of them achieve, you know, any unexpected outcomes in terms of, you know.
So at this stage, you're not proposing to have a physical build-out?
No.
Okay.
No.
Right, okay. I'll open it up for debate. Mike?
Just got a week's slip to show to start with. Should.
What is it? It's weird.
Oh, it filtered out. Filtered out the cars and
Look at this.
There's Aaron.
On a sign too.
Looks more like you, Tim.
Yeah, I'm talking about Bookie.
St Asaph Street should no longer be seen as a through road. It's a destination in its own right. The previous council designed a street for people, and as that clip shows, people are using it. That clip was a condensed 10-minute window on a weekday and showed during that period 74 pedestrians, a number of whom crossed mid-block. Removed from that clip were the passing motorists, and during that same 10 minutes there were only 17 more cars. This was provided by a submitter against lowering the speed limit because the main transport mode on St Asaph Street, to his opinion, were cars, and therefore it should stay at 50. It has the reverse effect. What it shows was how many people are currently using St Asaph Street to walk. And this is before the school and the Metro Sports facility have opened. It shows that the laneways have created desire lines that prompt people into mid-block crossings. Evidence shows that slowing down speeds saves lives. So this decision will not increase congestion, it will not increase travel times. What it will do is create an even safer environment. The previous council designed and approved a street layout that created a 30-zone environment, and independent safety audits state that it needs to be 30 kilometres per hour. The majority of councillors here today voted last term for St Asaph Street to have this low speed design, yet decided in 2016 not to drop the speed. We had an opportunity in 2017 to change the design, and yet the majority of you said no. We are presented with 2 independent safety reports that clearly show that this road needs to be 30 kilometres per hour. We have the data to show that slow speed zones in our city core have slowed down vehicles and have reduced crashes. We know very shortly that a school with children as young as 5 will be opening, and a couple of years later the Metro Sports facility. When you read all the submissions, read all the information, as the members of the hearings panel have, it is clear that only one decision can be reached. This decision cannot simply be based on numbers. It needs to be based on the quality of information provided to us from both submitters and expert advice. Time and time again, there was submission opposing this for reasons that were not relevant to St Asaph Street or giving no reason at all. While the submissions against add value to the decision making, the sum of that value does not equal better the evidence and submissions for decreasing the speed limit. As leaders of this city, we are charged with making the right decision, even when you think it's not popular. A potential consequence of a no vote today is unthinkable. If we don't agree to a 30-kilometre zone, the next step to ensure that we have a safe environment will be to remove all the car parking on the south side. Your choice. A 30 speed limit that will actually have no negative impact on anyone, or the removal of all the car parks on one side of the street at a substantial cost. Unless you do nothing and just wait and hope and possibly pray that no one is seriously injured or killed. Just imagine a 5-year-old running onto a child and hit by a car doing the speed limit of 50 k's an hour. Thanks.
Tim, Glenn, Phil.
Look, thank you. Where we have independent safety audits telling us that this low speed environment should be a 30k street, I think that we are between a rock and a hard place in a sense. But that video that was shown by the chair of the hearings panel really does show that this environment has changed already. When we looked at this very early on, when we were talking about the change of the design, I believe at that time it was discussed that the average car speed then along St Asaph was 40 k's. Now we've been told that it has changed to around about the average of 30 k's. So the environment is already changing. It's already changed to a high pedestrian area. And as we change further to the school and the Metro Sports facility, we already have Hagley Community College on Hagley Ave. But where you have young people who aren't so, or their minds aren't so evolved with regards to speeding traffic, etc., I think we have to look at this changing environment and what our vision was for the central city at the start. Rather than looking at the records of fatalities in the 4Avs, maybe it would have been better to look at the pedestrian versus vehicle incidents, and that would have been a better measure to look at. I don't think we have a choice. I think that it has to be a 30k decision. If we stuck with 50 k's, one of the big concerns was when St Asaph Street first came on with regards to change was the loss of parking. And if we stay at 50 k's and it is a low speed zone, then what would it be the consequence of that? We've heard that it would be the removal of further parking. So that is exactly what people didn't want, and I don't think it's a positive change and a further cost to the city. So I will be supporting the 30 Ks. Thank you.
Okay,
Glenn?
thank you. I'm going to support this, and I have 3 main points. The first, I'd like to build on Tim's statement before he said simple physics. It strikes me that when we look at the table over death and injury risk percentages, that we're actually looking at a logarithmic increase, something with which we will all be familiar with. Following the earthquake experience, the Richter scale is built on that. This is not a simple, straightforward increase on a fixed scale. It's actually a logarithmic increase when you look at the data. I look at the wider street context here, and it seems to me it would make sense to bring this into the fold to make it 30 kilometres as well. In terms of speaking for those, which is one of our key roles as elected representatives, speaking for those who do not have a voice or perhaps have less voice than we do. In this case, we're actually speaking not only for adults but 5 to 18-year-olds. 5-year-olds, and for some years do not have a developed or any peripheral vision. So they're disadvantaged from the get-go in amongst vehicles driven by adults. And I think for me, what is really important is that as the authority which originally gave the planning consent, or would have, for this school to go there, do we not now have a duty of care to keep those citizens of our community as safe over the things over which we do have control, in this case road speed limits. It also strikes me that looking forward, when those 5-year-olds are adults and their turn comes to submit on future council speed changes, what will they say? Thank you.
Phil?
Having been on the panel, it became absolutely clear to me, and I think it was unfortunate that in fact a lot of the information on the technical part and the speed and the impact of that hadn't been available to a lot of the submitters. And I think if it had, they would have changed their minds. It certainly focused my mind in being on the panel. And Councillor Livingston has referred to that impact and that of the physics. That basically, when drivers are doing 30k, there's a 10% chance of a death if they hit somebody. But at 50k, it increases to 80%. And I just cannot, I cannot think about that at all, and that we allow 50k on here when it's already actually 30k, and especially when it comes to those who are vulnerable. And we're talking about kids outside of school. We're also talking about ordinary pedestrians, and we saw some of them, and many of those people crossing the street, and also the cyclists. And I think it's unfortunate that in fact our aim really to change the mode of transport has yet to be really picked up in terms of our psyches. That basically we know that local government, that's what we want to do because we want to have our roads safe, we want to reduce congestion, and central government want the same. But in fact, when it comes to the crunch and people are asked, we still think in a siloed way in terms of how will it be for me in my motor car or my bike or just walking. And I think clearly we've got a lot more to do yet as a council and probably as a country to change that thinking really, so that in fact speeds do become safe and appropriate, and we lower this terrible road toll which we currently have. That's a big part of what this is about. And there can be all sorts of minor technical changes that councils might make. But I just urge you to think of the safety of those who are most vulnerable, which is really what this is all about.
Yep, Pauline?
Yes, I agree with all the points that have been made already, and I don't want to repeat them. But basically, we heard that in December 2014, the Order in Council, basically that demarcated the 30k area. But since then, things have changed in St Asaph Street, and there has been an organic migration of hospitality, that's the bars, cafes, restaurants, which has also caused a huge increase in the pedestrian traffic, which was shown to us clearly by the chair of the panel today. And also we've heard about the school arriving as well, which has a great impact on the street. But the current street design has now resulted from a compromise to assuage the resistance to complete parking loss on the south side, and I think that's a really important point to remember. So the design we've ended up with now actually supports the 30k. So our decision today is actually academic. We're formalising what is actually occurring. Quite a few of the submissions based their opposition on their belief that a slower speed did not reduce injuries, but today we have been assured that speed reduction does increase safety dramatically. The 30k also assists with parking ease and entering driveways. It reduces the pressure on people if they're already travelling slowly, reduces that pressure on panicking to get into a park and being allowed to do so. And since the traffic is currently travelling at 30k's, formalising this limit today will not cause any increase in congestion, which was another concern of submitters who actually lodged opposition. I think that's an important point to note too. So effectively, we're making St Asaph Street the new south boundary of the Central City core 30k zone. And I think that our new city is different. And change is not always easy to accept. But I think Christchurch people are becoming accustomed to these changes and getting around our city. It's a new way of getting around, a new way of thinking, and we're now being asked to share the space. So it is a very different city. So on that note, I am indicating my support for the hearing panel recommendations.
Dion, then Anne.
This has been a pretty tricky process right from word go, especially with all the comments and everything that I've had. The consultation has given its response as a no to the speed limit change to 30 kilometres an hour. I'll focus on the other bits soon. It has been mentioned that many submissions were venting, and it was implied that they shouldn't be counted or given as much weight into this consultation process. And I do find that comment quite infuriating. Everyone who takes the time and makes a comment to the council in a consultation should be valued, and they are. And I want to see all these views, no matter what they are valued and listened to. Yes, some of the comments in the consultation, and I have read most of them twice now, are pointing to a larger disagreement about how the council is delivering the road network changes in the central city. And we should listen to that warning and use it as a wake-up call to do things better in the future. We aren't bringing the communities along with us when we're doing these changes. The data and representation of data can be manipulated to give an argument either way. Whichever way one wants to be, have it presented. Many of the comments in the consultation that supported could also be manipulated to give one's outcome that they want, and some others in a different way. But again, they are all valuable and worth listening to. There was a large proportion of people who supported the speed limit reduction who had an interest in the school on St Asaph Street and also Hagley Ave. Why was the school put there in that in this part of the city in the first place? Sort of still, I have question marks in my mind, but the point is that it's there. So these are relevant considerations to take into a consideration for myself. This is where the hearings panel. This is why in the hearings panel I foreshadowed a motion to install a school speed zone outside Unlimited School and also Hagley College. I believe this was a problem-solving compromise to give a large group who supported the consideration they were seeking, but sadly I failed in that attempt. I hate the design of St Asaph Street. I'm just going to put it out there. It's a basket case, and in my opinion we've failed the recovery by putting the separated cycleways on the one-way streets. And I'm very disappointed by it, and I believe we should have had more consideration to actually delivering what was initially put and having the cycleways in the south frame. But again, we've got to live with what we've got. The data can be overwhelming when you look at it. there's a lot of data there. Most of it presented slower speeds as safe, which is pretty much common sense. But without the speed limit, it seems, even implemented, it seems that the street has already been safe by the design changes. So the question I have is, are we fixing a problem that doesn't exist? But we have also been advised that speed limit safety in that street is advisable by reducing the speed limit.
Thank
you.
So
can I just finish? I've got two more sentences, please.
Yep, two more sentences.
I voted against it in the hearings panel. The issue I face in the decision is the growth of the area, especially the 3 blocks from Madras to Montreal. In saying this, and Southtown, I believe, is going to be one of the best places of our central city. A saying I follow is leadership is about doing the right thing. Given this, I have changed my opinion and feel that I feel as though as a city councillor, the right thing to do, against my own personal view, is to reduce the speed limit in line with what I've been told. But I do not like the street design, and I think we need to fix it. I don't support the gateways, and I support the hospital 10 km/h speed limit review.
Thank you. Anne?
Thank you. So this is really complex. It can be, and it has become quite complex. But actually for me, it comes down to a very simple question. Do we value our children, our young people, and our most vulnerable? And is safety one of our most key priorities? I believe it should be. And a relatively straightforward and cost-effective speed management measure to reduce speed limits is tangible evidence that we take the safety of our most vulnerable seriously. So, are we serious about this? If we are, we will endorse the excellent work that the panel has done and their recommendations today. Let's make this city one that has a reputation for looking after and valuing our young people and our most vulnerable.
David, Vicky.
Look, as one, I think that I'm pretty sure I did oppose the original design of St Asaph Street. I have some reservations, and I share a lot of the sentiments that Councillor Swiggs has expressed a few moments ago. Having said that, I do support the 30k inner core speed zone for the inner core. I'm having extreme difficulty supporting number 1, and may ask for it to be put separately. St Asaph Street, I believe, is a major thoroughfare that connects the city with via Riccarton Ave with the west and south of the city. The design, I feel, was extremely poor, and now, as a consequence of that design, we've basically created a street that forces a 30 km speed zone through it. So I'm having some extreme reservations about the whole thing. I'm likely to vote against one.
Vicky?
It seems to me that there are 4 things here. The safety audit says 30k is the required speed on that street, on St Asaph Street. If we were directors of a company and we ignored such safety advice and somebody was hurt or injured or killed on that street, we would be personally liable for that. I think it's really important to listen to safety audits. I think they matter a huge amount. The current effective speed limit on that street is between 30 and 37 kilometres an hour. That's what actually happens on that street. I use it every day. And that's the way the street suggests that it operates, and that's what actually happens. So to suddenly say the speed limit is 50 when actually the lights are not tailored for that at all would just be crazy. The school has gone there because it's a Ministry of Education school and they choose the site. So our Tawhiti Unlimited Discovery will have a roll of 670 kids from year 1 to 13 and beyond. The parents come there a lot. They will also bring preschoolers there. The parents can stay there all day if they want to. They're very involved in the education process, and the kids use the entire city all day. So I'm not sure when the speed zone concept could possibly operate. It would need to be there from about 7 in the morning to sometimes 8 at night in terms of a speed zone outside a special character school that uses the entire city as its learning environment. And I think the other thing, I actually think probably one of the best things that the previous government did was to put that 30k speed limit in the central city. And I think one of the reasons for it is that what we're seeing is massive disruption to the transport technologies. And we've seen Lime scooters arrive and just go crazy in the city and just be adopted so fast. And what we're going to see in the next year, 5 years, is massive more disruptive technologies in transport. And the joy of Christchurch now is that we have a city where we can experiment with new possibilities and we can try things, and it's actually safe to try those things. So what's happened with Lime scooters in Auckland has been radically different than what's happened with Lime scooters in Christchurch because of the city centre and the way in which it's been designed to allow really good access for pedestrians, bikes and all sorts of other modes of transport that we don't even yet know about. So this to me seems a complete no-brainer. I voted for 30k last time this came up. It seems absolutely sensible that we would make this street 30k's, and I'm really keen that we do that.
I've got Andrew, Jimmy, Jamie and Aaron and Yanni.
Thank you. Now this does appear to be complex, and I came here with a very open mind. Finding the balance between the response to a community consultation and robust technical advice is always going to be difficult, but that's the job that we're here to do. But to me, from the report and from the answers to questions and from the discussion today, there's a reasonably obvious set of facts. We've got a safety audit that recommends 30k's. We've got a current operating speed of around 30k's. We've constructed the street in a way that supports and in fact suggests that this should be 30k's. We've got a school going in. We've got a late night economy that generates significant foot traffic. One of the things that resonated for me in the figures that Yanni had requested around the fatalities was the role of alcohol in the outcomes, or the fact that some of those fatalities had occurred. And that's relevant to the late night economy on St Asaph Street when you've got people exiting and moving between bars, and in many cases using the cycleway and the road as an extension of the pavement when it gets busy down there. If we were to leave this as 50k's, there would be a significant loss of parking, which given previous feedback on St Asaph Street would not be supported. And there would be significant cost and significant change involved in doing that. But above all, road safety, and if we're responsible governors of this city, road safety should be absolutely paramount, is one of the key issues for me here. No pedestrian wants to be hit by a car. No cyclist wants to be hit by a car, but perhaps more to the point, no driver of a car wants to be involved in an accident including or involving a pedestrian or a cyclist. So having come here with a very open mind today, I'm now absolutely convinced that we should be supporting the 30k speed limit.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, because this is a changing world, you know, the CBD also being changed every day. But how to meet the needs, update the kind of the needs. That's most important, because if we review today and compare to the 2 years ago or even 7 years ago after earthquake, every day is a difference. Especially at moments, more and more the people, the visitors, the pedestrians, the cyclists, the motorists, etc., tourism come to the back to the CBD. So if we review this all core value, you know, core kind of core center, most of the street, the current street is a 30k. If we like St Asaph or the Hagley Avenue or Rick Avenue, we are keep the 50k. That's inconsistent. And also to get the drivers get lost, you know, confused, etc. So keep the consistent. That's important. The other ones we all review those the kind of the figure, you know, 30k, 40k, 50k. The death rate 30k is drop to the 10%, 40k increase to 32. Your 50k 80%. That's serious. You will still keep the summer street 50k create high risk. There's external social the cost, whether it's paid by the ratepayer or by the taxpayer. We need to consider this one. Especially I totally agree, the staff and also my fellow councillors meeting. The kids, we need to more careful. If the new school will be open in April of this year, and also the new the metro sports facility will be built again in surrounding the area, then we need to take this more seriously. So I agree. Generally, I totally agree the hearing panel recommendation. Only the paragraph 2 and the paragraph 5. I'm still doubt. Because while most of the street we established the new series hall location, but why in front of the hospital we are not set up? This is my particular concern. We also need to set up, particularly in the paragraph the paragraph 5, and also if we set up those series location, then the paragraph 2 we can reduce to the 30K as well. So consistent with all those CBD street. These two, we need to review as quickly as possible. If start mentioning in April, I agree. Otherwise, I'm not support these two paragraphs.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks. The items that I won't be supporting here are the what are they called? The thresholds or the gateways. Just purely because with the conversation that we've been having, it's around the road layouts and the signage which is going to suggest that. So I think more build outs and more loss of on-street parking is probably not a positive, and the outcome that you're trying to achieve by it is going to be achieved anyway, simply, like I said, by the street treatment and the signage. So I won't be supporting those gateways. I'm happy to not alter the speed on Hagley Ave outside the hospital, because actually going back to those street treatments, again, the street itself and that treatment doesn't suggest that a 4-lane thoroughfare is 30 k's.
Riccarton Ave, not Hagley Ave.
Yeah, sorry,
Hagley
Ave. Riccarton Ave. Outside the hospital. Yeah. Yes, perfect, thank you. And I will support the 10 k's for the hospital gap on Oxford Terrace, just because Oxford Terrace anyway is 10 k's, so that makes sense to join that up. As for St Asaph Street, this is a tricky one. Like the Deputy Mayor, like most of you in this room, I've come into this with an open mind. I can see both sides of it. I think I've got to the point where I actually don't believe that it makes that much of a difference, to be perfectly honest. The elephant in the room that I think actually deep down everyone knows is that St Asaph Street is just really badly designed. It feels dangerous, it's too narrow. You'll struggle to drive down St Asaph Street and ever see two large vehicles driving side by side. Two buses won't drive side by side. A lot of people tend to drive in the centre of the road. Want to take your life in your hands, have a baby seat in the back of a car and try and find a park and take that baby seat out. Now that I have children now, we just avoid the places down there because it's a badly designed road when you've got babies or you're trying to get out or find a park, and the build-outs unfortunately hamper manoeuvrability. So I think that the point that I'd like to make with this is not just to have a beat up on that, but for us to be cognizant of what the realities around the street are and try and find an opportunity to address what the real fundamental issue with St Asaph Street is. So let's review it, let's keep this in mind, and let's fix it. But right now what we have in front of us is 50 k's or 30 k's. You can't go 50 k's, so it's pretty stupid to have a sign telling you to do a speed that you can't do. So the road is dangerous, the road doesn't work, they go 30 k's anyway, so leave it at 30 k's. In my view, it's not actually changing it to 30 k's, it's keeping it at 30 k's.
Aaron?
Well, I've had overwhelming feedback myself beyond the submissions on this. It's around St Asaph Street, and it's not just on this consultation, it was leading into that, and it's similar to what everyone's mentioned. A lot of people are pretty disgruntled by what's happened there, and now the feedback's 2-1 against what we are deciding on today, so most of us probably received phone calls from residents that ask, are we going to listen as a council to what they say? So that's the question I put to everyone, do we listen? The 10k in the gap at Oxford Terrace there, absolutely support that. It feels like a car park. That's a car park speed, and that'll work really well there. The 10k I have found out have confirmed that it does apply to the footpath, so please don't run through there, anyone, or get up too much speed in your wheelchair, or certainly if you're cycling through there, you'll be restricted to 10k an hour as well. So that'll come as a surprise to a few people. Now, the bits I just want to speak to around the 30k versus 50k is the southern frame had that beautiful central cycleway through it that linked up with the ECAN building, with the hospital campus, with the university campus at the hospital, the whole lot. Somewhere along the way someone's dropped the ball, and that hasn't been finished, although there is a massive laneway through there for those that haven't gone down. It's a multi-million-dollar stunning laneway, one of the best in the world, with no one in it. So if the gun club need to move, we could offer them that, because they certainly wouldn't hit anyone. It's unused. It would have been great as a cycleway and pedestrian access through there. It is there. We should be taking the cycleway off St Asaph Street. The one-way streets, I believe, are a thoroughfare through the inner city. And if you're going to the hospital, if you live in the east side of the city, how do you get to the hospital in a hurry? I'd like to pose that question to anyone here. You can ring an ambulance. They do take on average 14 minutes to get to your place, then they'll take you to the hospital. Or you can put your child or your mum or yourself in the car and take yourself there. Most cars are automatic, so you can lose a limb and still get yourself there. It is, how do you get from the east side of the city to the hospital? That's my question. How do you do it? You can go down St Asaph Street at 30k an hour. You would get there quicker if the lights were green waved at 50k an hour. You could take our preferred routes as a city on the 4 avenues, but those lights aren't sequenced, and you don't have the authority to run red lights, so you'll wait at traffic lights to get yourself to the hospital. And so that is my question for people coming from the east side of the city. How do you get there in a hurry? Or is a hospital not that important? There's another question for us to ask ourselves as we plan our and deliver on our inner city projects. So for me, that is the stickler for St Asaph Street. The cycleway should not be there. We should be reviewing whether it comes off, because also, ironically, in the press today, there's a story about the effects of lead on people's breathing. Cycle next to a busy road, get as much lead as you can, and look for the impact.
Thank you. Yanni.
I've just asked staff to put some things up. So a question was asked before around what are these routes for? In the accessible city plan, these were for car travel. St Asaph Street and Chilham Street are the main distributor streets in our city. If staff could just go to the next one. So I think context is really important here. We are completely confused as a city and as central government about what we're trying to achieve in our central city. The time has got to be to review the accessible city transport plan. I don't know if staff can just put the next one up.
Just trying to.
Okay, cool. So I'll just keep talking. There was one submission in particular that really resonated with me, of someone who was quite concerned about what we were proposing, and that basically took. It said, please take a slow walk through some areas of the CBD, looking with a visitor to the city eyes. It is a battlefield of signage. You'll find there are already so many different signs trying to convey what is happening in the area. These are in relation to speed, cyclists, parking, no parking, parking duration, lanes, one-ways, turn or no turn, traffic lights, etc. It has become a nightmare that can only be summed up as a confusing maze that is very local. Imagine how the visitor feels. So, I think we've really overcomplicated and over-designed our central city. And I think actually we need to take people with us. That's really important. We've got resident surveys showing that people's dissatisfaction with us is at all-time high. People don't feel that we're listening to them or that they can have influence on our decisions. Clearly through this consultation, people have overwhelmingly expressed a view of concern. So I think this needs more work. Some of the things that I think we should be considering are, again, reducing speed limits in the small narrow streets within our 4 avenues. Putting in a 15k or a 10k speed limit slow zone outside the school. I totally understand the need for children and young people to feel safe, but let's slow the traffic right down. There's still a risk if you go to 30k. Ultimately, I don't think the 30k speed limit is going to make any difference at all. We've already heard that the speed limit, people are going about 30 to 37. Overwhelmingly, people were concerned at the lack of enforcement. And I think actually the community, we used to have some great sayings about the knowledge of the community, the collective knowledge of the community can often exceed the knowledge of the experts or the wisdom of the experts. And I do agree, in this particular case, that seems to be sensible. Unfortunately, you don't have the other slides. I was going to show you a beautiful photo of the south frame. That is where the cycling and pedestrian should be going in this area. And the key walking route that was identified in the accessible city plan was also, there we go, just quickly bring it up. That's the key traffic distributor street, and that's St. Asaph and Chewham. And if we just go to the next two, which won't take long, this was the south frame, which was the key cycling and walking corridor, and just the final one, which will show you the beautiful south frame that was supposed, okay, it's not, they've got it wrong, but anyway, in essence, just in conclusion, it's clear that we need to review the accessible city plan. It's not working at all. It's a complex and confused plan that doesn't work for so many people. So we need to review the district plan. If we want land use and traffic corridor planning to work well, then we need to look at the district plan as well, how land use decisions are made. So my suggestion is we pause, we do more work on this. I can't support wasting money now coming up with an interim solution when there's things like the Metro Sports that still need to be resolved, and as such I won't be supporting this today.
Okay. Anyone else? I'll put Mike. Close the debate.
Thank you. Just stop this, you dicks. How much weight do you put to that submission opposing this proposal? Now, I value every single submission, but when I weigh that against expert advice, scientific evidence that proves that slowing speed saves lives, it doesn't add much weight. And like I said during my debate, it all adds up. But the amount of that does not actually surpass the evidence we have and the submissions for reducing the speeds. I know Darren Kewen says that he cannot support something that's 2 to 1 against, yet he's going to support Oxford Terrace, which is also 2 to 1 against. It seems to me that some councillors fixate on popular decision making. We all want progress, but so many of us refuse to accept change. We have been faced now with a design that many councillors who actually said yes to now suddenly say no to the one thing that we need to do to actually make it safe. You know, I accept that robust debates around recommendations from hearings panel is actually very worthwhile. Yet I note councillors who continually tell us to not relitigate these recommendations are here today doing exactly what they say we shouldn't do. I actually welcome this debate. It's healthy debate. It shows that we're actually democratic. But please, if you're going to be sitting around this table, constantly tell us not to open up these things that we've made had recommendations from hearings panel. It's a little bit ironic that suddenly you're starting to relitigate it. On that, put the motion.
Thank you. Well, actually, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no.
Are you putting these separately?
Oh, sorry. Okay. So we'll carve these off. Can we go down to the separate one? So that's the 10k speed limit for sections of Oxford Terrace and Antigua Street.
So sorry, you're doing.
So this is no. Well, I wanted to start at the bottom and work my way up.
Oh.
If that's okay. No.
There's 8 recommendations.
No. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm happy to do it.
Why don't we start at 1?
We'll start at number 1.
Yeah.
So number 1 is to approve the proposed 30k slow speed zone extension to St Asaph Street between Madras and Hagley from Selwyn to Riccarton, and not to approve the proposal to reduce the speed limit from 50 to 30 on Riccarton Avenue in front of Christchurch Hospital.
Sorry, can you put St Asaph perhaps?
Yeah.
They're quite, they're just different ones. Like some people have spoken in favour of some of these and not of others.
So we had people indicate what they wanted to vote on separately. Yes. So I will, and we had them separated out on that basis. So it might have been helpful just to have that clear. So so if I start with approve the proposal to reduce the speed limit from 50 to 30 on Senasif Street from Address to Hagley.
Yep.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. And would you just stick up your hand for no, and I'll have them recorded, those that want to. Yanni, Aaron, David.
Jimmy's hands.
And then approve the proposal from Hagley Ave from Selwyn Street to Riccarton Ave. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Okay, so stick up your hand for no. So that's David, Jamie, and Aaron. And then, so that's carried. Does not approve the proposal to reduce the speed limit from 50 to 30 on the following streets. Well, on Riccarton Ave. You don't need to put on the following streets with an A, just change it to Riccarton Ave in front of Christchurch Hospital. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. The proposed 10k speed limit for sections of Oxford Terrace and Antigua Street. I'll put them all together. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And then the 30k gateway thresholds on the listed streets. Does anyone want any of them put separately or just on block? I'll put the motion. Hang on. Sorry. This. Can I just go up because you've got there the panel further notes. Sorry. No, sorry, it was the reconsideration of the gateway on Stewart Street. Yeah, okay, it doesn't matter, it's just noting. Yeah. Do we want to note that though? I mean, or is it just simply, do we note it? I mean, it's written as the panel notes, so I don't, sorry. The council notes, okay. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Do you want to stick up your hands for no? Yanni, Aaron, Dion, Jamie and David. So that's carried. The next one, what? Does not approve the, okay, well, because it was a proposal to adjust the speed limit threshold locations, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And then 7, 8 and 9. And the first one is requesting that future consultations with Transport Elements have appropriate technical and contextual information available, which I think will certainly help. And then requesting staff to keep under review the Stewart Street, Riccarton Ave, Antigua, and to report back to ITE if conditions warrant a speed change. So I'll put that motion.
Do we need to change the hearings in number 8?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you.